Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's EBnet Exec Meet and Greet. I'm joined by Tobie van Heerden, who is the CEO of 10X, and I'm looking forward to catching up with him this afternoon. Welcome to EBnet Stream, Tobie.
Good afternoon, Natalie. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. I'm going to start with the question, the name. You say in the UK is pronounced slightly differently. Are you attached to either one pronunciation of it?
Look, my parents, when they gave me my name, they gave me my name. So it was Tobie. But then, in the beginning of my career, I worked in the UK. So in the beginning of my career, I mean when I was 25, and the Brits had a difficulty pronouncing, Tobie van Heerden. So I think it took about 3 months, and I had to say my name as Tobie van Heerden. So. Now that I'm back to my roots, back in South Africa, I prefer to be called by the real pronunciation.
Excellent. We'll go with Tobie for today then. Tobie, you touched a little bit about the beginning of your career. Do you maybe want to take us through your career, the highlights over the past however many decades?
Yeah, I turned 50 last week, so we can back work it back from there. And I think my grey beard does sort of say that I'm a bit older than I used to be. Started my career. I studied actuarial science at Stellenbosch. Why I wanted to become an actuary, I think that's a total different discussion at some point. I wasn't definitely not the cleverest guy in my class. I walked into my first year class, and I think there was 10. Those days I still have it. The top 20 names. I think 10 out of the top 20 was in my class. And needless to say, I wasn't one of those 10. And then the prof said, look to your left, look to your right, look to your left again, and left, sort of like 5 people. Out of the 5 people, one of you might get through to honors. So that gave me a bit of the heebie-jeebies. But needless to say, I worked hard, worked tirelessly, and I managed to get through that. And then after my honors year, I did triathlon at sort of diverse rugby and then triathlon, and and then I moved in my second year of honors. I did 2 years of honors to do a year of sort of professional triathlete. Then moved to the UK, where I started my career with a life insurance company called Abbey Life, and I worked on the pensions review there, which was a big thing. It was sort of the early 90s, a big thing in the UK at the time. So it was the mis-selling of pensions to individuals there. So worked on that for 4 years while I qualified there. Missed home, came back to Alexander Forbes. So Papa Knutzer is a good dear friend of ours, got me into the business there, and I learned a hell of a lot from him in a question of like 4 years. There's sort of a jump into asset management, 11 months with African Harvest, and then went to Investec Asset Management. So Hendrik and co had a coffee with me. I didn't go through 15 interviews. I think it was 2. And they gave me a job without a title. So they said, just come in and we'll find a place for you. I said, it's a bit open, but let's go for it. And 17 years, later, I was there still, traveled the globe with them, which was amazing. So I did 5 years in South Africa, ran the institutional business for Investec in South Africa. And then I went over to Hong Kong for a year, where we looked at sort of the Asia business at that point in time. I'm motivated that we open an office in Singapore. And I spent sort of the last sort of next 7 years in Singapore, looking after the Asia business and the Middle East business, which was, quite, from a cultural point of view, you learn to work with different types of people, coming from South Africa, you had Asian culture, then you had the Middle East. So that was absolutely, sort of pushing me in lots of different directions, and selling product and manufacturing to them, you have horses for courses. So I did a total of 8 years, Middle East and Asia, and then I came back to South Africa just before sort of COVID really hit in 2019. And I must say, so a lot of my work was still, or all my work was still working in Asia. So I worked remotely, like literally for 2 months or 2 weeks a month, and in 2 months I would be traveling. I'd be on the road, either in Singapore or the Middle East somewhere. And sort of when COVID hit, for me, it was just plug and play. It was fantastic because I was used to it, working remotely, where I think there was a challenge for most other people that wasn't used to working remotely. Well, and then just after COVID, 2021, the opportunity with 10x came along, and I always wanted to. There was a time in my career where I thought, this whole CEO thing, maybe I'm not going to be one. And sort of just as well as I gave up on the idea, the 10x thing came along. And for me, at that point in time in my career, I didn't want to join another big organization in terms of becoming, a large, let's say Coronation or Alan Gray or what. I think, that was pretty much done. So I was looking for something, where it's very much tech orientated, because I believed at that point in time, technology, especially in investment space, hasn't been used and applied properly, and there's scope for massive disruption in that space. Typically because asset managers have been building up for like 30 years, so to change legacy and those things is super hard, and a big beast to turn around. So I think technology was a big thing for me. And secondly, when I worked in Asia and the Middle East, I saw this rise of passive. How many sort of clients were starting to adopt passive strategy, index strategies, ETFs in their portfolios. And in South Africa, we're way under where we were globally. So, so those were two big waves that really attracted me to 10x, which was a very small business at the time. It was 15 billion rand under management. My portfolio I was running at 91 was probably 10 times, it was 10 times the size. So here I go from my portfolio, and I mean, Investec was much bigger than that. To the small little business with, I think we were 55 staff, trying to change it. And I think we've done a fantastic job so far.
Sure. I mean, I've just realized we have so much in common. So I'll start with the first point, and that is that my daughter has just started actuarial science at Stellenbosch this year, and the profs are still saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's still difficult.
She phoned me after the first day and said, "Mom, this is like really tough."
Look, the first year is still a breeze. If she can get through second year, she can get through. So don't tell her that, but because your first year you sort of settling in, but the second year is a tough year.
I believe so. But let's get back to all things business. Effectively, you went from a small fish in a very big pond to a big fish in a small pond, and I mean those are the kind of words you used. What was the attraction, what kind of impact were you hoping to deliver by taking on a CEO role at a business, a CEO role at a business like 10x?
I mean, firstly, I was very fortunate to work with fantastic people at Investec or 91. There's amazing people there, and a lot of work they do and put into the business, and also that I've done around leadership, talent management, all of that. And so I was very fortunate to be part of that. Also within the 91 scheme of things, I did a hell of a lot. I joined, initially I think I was head of marketing, then ran the institutional business, then I was in Hong Kong, and then in Singapore, and then we built some investment manufacturing at some point in Singapore. So I was allowed to do quite a lot within the business, which was amazing, absolutely amazing. But at the same time, these are large organizations, people that's been there for a very, very long time. And that's why I sort of said, it's super difficult to then envision, am I going to take Hendrik's job? Is never on the cards for me in terms of my thinking, because, this is a guy that is a founder. He's been there for a lot of years. He's got so much vested interest, and there's a lot of good people in that organization. And I was quite happy, doing what I'm doing, learning a lot. And so when I got the 10x opportunity, the immediate sort of response in my sort of brain and thinking was, geez, I've learned so much, and applying them in this firm became super natural from that point of view. So I didn't go and join 10x and say, this is what I'm going to do off the bat there. Because I think then you start with a very fixed mindset around, this is really what you want to accomplish, and then you limit yourself to a large extent. So when I joined, it was very high level. It was like, index is growing. I think technology is going to be super key in this, and so it was looking at what I had, and then just sort of putting, let's call it, putting focus to that, and then applying sort of, let's call it, some petrol to the fire. Things that was working relatively okay, just making sure it's super efficient and working super well and doubling down on those initiatives. And that's effectively what we've done firstly. The second thing is I realized that the culture, the people in an investment business. That's the key. I mean, yes, your clients, obviously, they're the ones that give you money. And you've got a massive trust element there that you've got to manage. But if you run a business like an investment management business and you don't have an established culture and leadership, talent management, all of that sort of stuff, it's really, you can build up to a certain scale and then it just fizzles out. So a lot of the stuff that I, sort of took from my 91 days and work I've done on myself and all of that, I've managed to apply within our business, which then sort of just changes everything. It changes the whole business. So I said to my, sort of shareholders, you gave me a certain car 4 years ago. The car is now it's a different car with the same number on it, and that's 10X. With the car, the color, the engine, everything is totally different.
And I'm sure they're delighted with that, because you're only doing good things there. But I want to touch on two parts really. But the first part that you've talked about is technology, and specifically, let's drill down a little bit into technology and asset management. What are your views? What are the big disruptors that you can predict or foresee happening in your industry? And I mean, I'm so tempted to say in the next 5 to 10 years, but it feels like it's now, shorter time horizons, and we start talking about things like the next 2 years, things like AI. Where's 10X on those types of developments?
Yeah, I mean, Natalie, I think let's just take a step back and think around technology within asset management. So where typically do you employ technology is, one is obviously on your operational side. So people doing admin and all of that, there's a lot of technology systems involved in that. And the other component of technology is really around your investment manufacturing. So I remember 20 years ago, 25 years ago, at 91, we developed this sort of 4-factor approach. We looked at screening the market with factors, and then every Monday you have a sort of a ranking on all the stocks, and then those are the top stocks were the one that the portfolio or the analyst would then analyze, put in the portfolios, etc., etc. If you take that now and you go, 25 years on, I mean, you can have it done by, pressing a button. So that's really where sort of technology and AI has really made a step up. It's really helped, I think, the sort of the active management space in providing that sifting sort of element for their portfolio. So if you look at those two elements, they're real, and there's constant evaluation happening. What we're doing at 10X is that, but then more. So firstly, we have technology we haven't got a side team. So there's no, yes, I've got a CTO, but there's no technology team per se. The way we work is really around creating this agile methodology where we create multifunctional squads. So what we do is, for instance, in a certain element of our business, and then we have let's call it 6 different teams at the moment. In that team, you have a very focused team that's got a North Star. So let's say, for instance, in our D2C or direct-to-consumer team, where we sell retirement annuity, press funds, or living annuity direct to the man in the street, we apply a North Star of our NPS score. Okay, so yes, I know there's lots of NPS scores, and you can sort of detect it any way, which way you want, but we spend a lot of time and effort to get that out, so we know that there's a real meritocracy on the numbers that come back with it, the sort of the rating that comes back from our clients. Okay, that's the North Star. In that squad, we have 2 developers. I've got the head of my product. So product in this instance is our website. I've got the head of our digital marketing, all our marketing efforts in the digital space. He's sitting in there, and then I've got a sort of investment guy there, and I've got a salesperson there. And that squad is solely responsible for driving the NPS score. They don't do anything else. So they're really, really focused around that. Similar to that, in our investment team, we're building a tool called Nexus, and there's a multifunctional squad on Nexus that just builds Nexus, with developers, investment people, investment operational people in that squad. Again, the squad is super small. It's 5 people in the squad, no more than that. But they focus around that outcome. Now, the way that asset management typically works is that at the start of the financial year, you have a project list, and it's he who screams the hardest that gets put at the top. And then, as the project manager, you typically have 10 projects that you got to manage through the year, and you rate your success and how far you've gone with each of them. Where we don't have that. One, we don't, so for instance, to apply awaiting to something that we will do in the business. In other words, somebody might come and say, listen, you guys, we think that we should build an international product, let's say. The first thing we do is we get data around it. How do we get data? We speak to our clients. So nothing can come into the shop if they haven't spoken to at least 50 clients. So it's not, I can't lie in the bar on a Sunday night and think about some other hairbrain, come into the morning on a Monday morning, get everybody around the boardroom and say, guys, we're missing this. This is what we should be doing. They will, first of all, they will not shout me out of the room, but I said, okay, let's look at the data, and 9 out of 10, the data doesn't back you. If it doesn't back you, it doesn't get priority. If it's not driving the North Star that team has put into play, it doesn't go. So even within that D2C squad, if we let's look at asset raising, what we sell to our clients. So if we say, let's do discretionary products, let's focus on that. We do, but, that they will, and cross-selling that to our existing client base. So if you're an RA client, buy a unit trust from us. And you go through the client and your 50 clients or 100 clients that you contact, and you realize, but actually, we've got the share of wallet already. What would I rather do? I'd rather double down on selling more RAs to more people because we can get better bandwidth there than trying to sell a unit trust, for instance, to an existing client because the take rate is not there. So it's a total different way of a firm operating and thinking, and therefore that's why I say to apply this into a large established firm with legacy issues, with teams in place, the way they operate is super, super difficult.
Sure. I mean, so that's kind of the one element I wanted to touch on, which was technology, and the second then being people, which you've already spent a lot of time talking about, and the kind of structure of your squads, you call them, which is an interesting word that I really enjoy. But I think from a leadership perspective, when you talk about managing people, if you had to distill leadership into one character trait that you would think is the most important, what do you think that is in your role at 10X?
Jeez, that's a hard question. One character trait, leadership.
No, I told you I wasn't going to ask you any hard questions. Sorry.
Okay, so I might get shouted out at some point, and you might get some of your listeners that says, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But one, I think leadership can't be taught. You can read a lot about it. Honestly. But the really good leaders that I've seen in my life, there's an underlying natural inclination to leadership. And there's two components to that. One is says leadership is actually more about yourself than about somebody else. And the two components to that is, one is the ability to know your own blind spots. And two is the ability to understand what drives the other person or the group. So, if you can, so getting that driver is absolutely key, and understanding your blind spot. I mean, there's ways and means about that. So surrounding yourself with not just your best mates, but with critics, all of that sort of stuff, getting mentors, all of that in play. So that's just blinds, and knowing that you're not perfect and you make silly mistakes. And if you know your blind spots, then you can act differently along with your advisors. And secondly, if you can understand what drives the individual on the other side, you can get them to be absolutely optimal in delivering the outcome that you're aiming for.
And so if you think then that leadership can't be taught, which is an interesting and quite controversial statement, do you believe then that there are different leaders for different business settings or different cycles in a business?
Definitely, no, for sure. So just when I say leadership can't be taught, that I stand by that. But what I want to caveat that with is a good leader would have done a lot of work on themselves, so they understand themselves very, very good in different types of situations. So how to react, you know where's your blind spots, where's your good spots, it's all about sort of stuff. So that's why I say it's a lot about yourself. So if you've done a lot of work on yourself, you've effectively done leadership training in life.
A bit like parenting.
Techniques, sure, like how to give critical advice or hard advice and all of that. In my view, that's not leadership, that's management. So there's a difference between leadership and management, and I think our industry, we get it wrong. Because a good manager is not a good leader. So you've got to distinguish between those two elements of when you talk about leadership and you talk about management. Then in terms of the cycle of a business, for sure, there's individuals and leaders that, if you look at, let's say, Elon Musk. So
Sure.
let's put it out there, okay? So as an individual, as a person, I think there's opinion around Elon Musk. As a visionary, as a leader in his organization, from where he started and what he's built, I think it's absolutely incredible.
Mm.
So is he a good person? Question mark. Is he a great leader in what he's built? For sure. I think, let's not even doubt that. But he was the right person at the right time in the right place for that job. So you get people or leaders that are, they're very good at, let's call it, at starting something up, getting something going. And I think that goes sort of into that personality colors. The 4 colors of personality. Unfortunately, one of the books I did read over December holidays was Surrounded by Idiots, where it goes into the 4 colors. So while I say I don't study, you can't talk, you've got to do stuff like that. So anyway, so that's typically let's call it your Mr. Yellow. He's got fantastic ideas and he can bring a crowd along and they can start something and he can get going. So he's 5-10 years into this gig and this business is now going. But now you get to the point where the business needs to expand. You need to think differently. You need to do, and typically what you see then is that founder can't let go. It's his baby, so he can't let go and he can't pivot himself into a different leadership space. Where you need another leader, another type of leader actually to come in and say, just you've done a great job here, but now we need to start doing differently. That's when you need probably a Mr. Red to come in and say, let's do it in a different way. So for sure, there's different leadership styles, and I think the ability of a very, very good leader is the ability to adapt to the changing situation, which is, I think, super hard.
Mm. And that obviously begs the next question, Tobie. What color are you?
I'm definitely red with a bit of.
I won't ask you to guess what color or colors am I.
I don't know well enough to actually. But if you give me another 10 minutes with you, and if I can ask you a question, yeah. But I might see a bit of blue in there. But my wife is definitely some green. So.
I think we're running out of time, unfortunately. I want to wrap up with one last question, and it's another thing we have in common. And I mean, I'm not sure you still do triathlon, do you?
I only no. Quit my triathlon to do just cycling because I didn't have enough time to do the 3 different disciplines. So actually for the last 20 odd years, just cycling. Anything with 2 wheels, I'll ride. So mountain bike, road bike, gravel bike, all of that. And now that I've got like 3 little ones at home, I still cycle. But also as you get older, I've mentioned that I'm in my 50s and you can see it's a bit of a thing now. I also started doing some strength training. Apparently they say that's something that you should be doing now.
I believe so. I mean, I turned 50 a couple months ago as well. So there's another thing in common.
75 was a good vintage.
Absolutely. But I mean, I was going to go back to triathlon and kind of say, what lessons did you learn in triathlon? But let's extrapolate that to cycling. I mean, why do you enjoy cycling, and kind of what lessons and what do you use that time to process while you're out on the bike?
Yeah, so I mean, if you ask me the lesson that I learned is there's a saying that goes, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work harder, which I think it couldn't be. It's just, I've seen in my life, if you add the widgets every day, it counts. It really counts at the end of the day. So it's just doing your bit every day. Whether that bit is, whether it's training every morning for an hour, just add the accumulation of that adds up. Whether it's sort of reading something every morning before that's how you change your mind. You change a lot of things. There's the small incremental changes rather than nothing, and if you try and change it, it's not sustainable. And so, if you ask me from cycling, what I've learned is like, just adding all the little widgets. And the same, I suppose, with triathlon and any of that sports. It just shows the accumulation of that. 1, 2, I mean, the bit about cycling that really helps me is that it's, you're out in the nature. You're out, and sometimes I do get more done in my head in terms of on that hour and a half on the bike than I could sitting in the office for an hour and a half in meetings. So, I get off the bike like, okay, there's a couple of things you write it down and away you go. It's like really brainwaves that you get. So I really like that sort of just time. It's the only time in the day that I really get to be alone. So I think that most of my cycling is not in a group with buddies. It used to be like that in the old days, and it helps a lot if you cycle in a group. But especially in the week, my times are such that it's by myself. And it's the alone time that I have in the day with myself, really, to process things, to think about things. And then if you're going quite hard on the bike, it's hard, but then you're like also pushing yourself, and it's that determination that sort of then pushes through, I suppose.
And obviously the donut at the end, right? Or is that just me?
Coffee at home. That's as far as I go.
I so hear and I echo the sentiment of the super productive you become when you are training, and the creativity that you kind of stimulate while you're out on your bike. And I'm hoping that you can maybe write a note for my boss and tell him that's what I'm actually doing when I'm busy training.
I think it's a hard one to explain to people that doesn't cycle. So what they do is they see the other cyclists on the road and they think, oh, that's what they're doing. Like 6 of them crap, while they're sitting in the bunch. And actually, it could be something totally different. But I'll still vote for you.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm gonna write that down. Tobie, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Sign it. How's that?
Thanks. I'll send you the draft. Tobie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice chatting to you.